Hello, everybody. Welcome to another broadcast of Philosophic Perspectives with your host, Arthur D. Schwartz. For more information on this show and to listen to past shows for free, please visit Arthur D. Schwartz. That's artistfirst.com/ArthurDSchwartz.htm. Now, here is your host of Philosophic Perspectives, Mr. Arthur D. Schwartz.
Hello, how are you? This is Arthur D. Schwartz here, and this is the first time I'm doing a radio show, hosting a radio show anyway. And so I thought I would tell you a little bit about me and how I got to this point. So I recently completed a book called Ethical Empowerment, Virtue Beyond the Paradigms, and I was looking to get radio interviews, and I stumbled upon ArtistFirst Radio, and we set up an interview, and before too long, they offered me an opportunity to have my own show, and I thought about it, and I thought, what a great idea. So on this program, I'm going to talk a little bit about my book, but on a broader, broader, more long-term view. I'm looking to have guests on my show to explore philosophic perspectives, as the name of the show would tell. Sure, we'll talk about philosophy, more pure philosophy, but we'll also talk about the arts and the sciences and multidisciplinary work, disciplines that produce some cause for shifting perspective. I think that's one of the most important things we can possibly do in life is to find new perspectives because, we come into this world, we got two eyes, we got two ears, and we see things from our own perspective. We grow up in a particular culture, a particular nation, a particular faith, or what have you, particular parents, particular family, particular, and it does have a tendency to shape our view of the world, and I think part of being human or trying to be more human or trying to be more enlightened or inspired is to transcend the narrowness of our particular perspectives, and hence the name of the show, Philosophic Perspectives. I'm very happy to be here and happy to have you as my listeners today. I'm going to begin by talking about my overview perspective, master perspective, you might say, of what the nature of morality and ethics happens to be. The book Ethical Empowerment, like any book on ethics, you have to put forth a notion of what exactly is your conception of ethics. Or, Arthur Schopenhauer many years ago wrote a book called The Basis of Morality. And so, my view is that, number one, it's not black and white. It's not about right, absolute right or wrongs, or all about rule-based ethics, like many types of ethics are. Utilitarian ethics, Kantian ethics, a lot of ethics are all based upon rules and then other rules that justify other rules. I believe you need to go deeper than that, and so, but one thing about it as well is it's not necessarily heavy and burdensome. Ethics, I think, should be an inspiring thing. It's about getting individuals and their communities and the world itself to reach for the stars, to be the best people we can be, the best communities we can be, and that's really what it comes down to. Not simply, negatives. Don't do that, and don't, and this is wrong, and this is right, and that kind of thing. And so, when you look at it that way, as Aristotle called it, he called it eudaimonia. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it means human flourishing. Ethics really is about human flourishing. It's not just about, don't do bad things. It's about what does it take to inspire us in every respect, in terms of our consciousness, in terms of our society, in terms of our individual greatness, and becoming the greatest people we can possibly become. And so I think that's extremely important. And I'm going to go a little bit more into what I consider to be the nature of morality, but I want to just throw this in at this point. A little while later in this program, I am going to ask the question, and I'm going to try to answer the question, where is Hollywood? Where is Hollywood? And so I'll return to that in a little while. But for me, when morality is a very resonant thing, a sort of oscillating juxtaposition, tension between self and other. We think of ethics as usually about how we treat other people, but really, if you believe in the love thy neighbor as thyself, as I do, it implies both to our treatment of other people and also our treatment of ourselves. And so that, therefore, if you're treating yourself badly, you're actually treating yourself unethically. Now, of course, you can easily see in philosophy, you have the Ayn Rands who are all about self-interest, and we have socialistic or communistic views of the collectivity and about and the social good, the greater good. And the truth is, I think that, and most people ultimately would agree, that it involves both things. And so therefore, ethics as a study of morality has to take into account those tensions. And so the tension, it's almost like you think of kind of radio frequency, and you got these frequencies, and sometimes they're very erratic. And what you try to do in ethics is to harmonize them. And so I look at three components of what constitutes morality, which I also think basically morality is essentially love. It's a dialogical expression of love in a universal sense. And so I look at love, I look at morality, and I think there are three principles rather that are involved, and they are dualistic. They're dualistic because there's the self-regarding and there's the other-regarding. And so the three principles that I have come up with are fairness to the self, fairness to the other, beneficence, or good, which means goodness to oneself, goodness to others, and compassion. We could think of compassion usually as compassion for other living things, other people, but also there is compassion for ourselves. I think a lot of problems in the world, collectively, individually, is really a lack of compassion for the self or for oneself or one's own. It could be extended collectively towards, to countries and societies and so forth and so on. So the world, the moral universe is, in my world, is a very oscillating, fluctuating, dynamic, dialectic enterprise between principles that pertain as they relate to as self-regarding or as other-regarding. And so therefore, when you have that kind of a moral universe, it's easily translated into, don't do this or don't do that, follow this rule or follow that rule, or particular laws or that type of thing. And so therefore, it's not black and white. There is I do feel what makes something moral or not ultimately has to do with whether it's encompassed by love, but that leaves a large spectrum. And I think a lot of problems in the world are because one individual or one society or one nation or one religion or what have you comes up with, well, they got the master principle about what's supposed to be the case, what's good, and how you're supposed to live, and they exclude all other points of view. And it's fundamentally because it's a fundamental myopia. They're coming from one perspective rather than the multiplicity of perspectives. Not only do I believe in a multiplicity of perspectives, but I believe in an aggressive seeking of perspectives, an aggressive searching for challenges to your own perspective, because I don't see how we can possibly have any confidence whatsoever that we're right unless we challenge ourselves to test our perspectives, whether you're an artist, whether you're a politician, whether you're a scientist, whether you're a teacher, whatever you happen to be. I think life is about learning And learning ultimately has to be about willingness to challenge your own perspectives. And so a big part of my book, Ethical Empowerment, is about what I call plural perspectivism, which is just that. It's a kind of pluralism, but an eager effort to understand other points of view and to challenge your own, and so that in the end, hopefully, there is some kind of ability to understand each other better. There will always be differences of opinion, but I do believe it's possible to operate under the framework of love. And so essentially what I've tried to do is to create a framework, a dialectical framework, a pluralistic framework, a framework based on loving intention that would help people, while there will always be differences, to find a deeper commonality in universal love, which I feel is the basis of morality. So that's, in a general way, the basic theme of my book. This is, by the way, this is not just going to be about my book. I'm just giving some basic introduction, and this is a kind of a spontaneous, extemporaneous exercise on my part. I did a little bit of improv acting years ago, so this is a bit of an improv. Another aspect is I am a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist in my professional life, and in a negative sense, I think part of the problem we have is hypnotic thinking in a negative sense. Those rules, those dogmas, those ideologies that people have are hypnotic. They're drilled into their heads, and from childhood, and it's hard to think any other way. And while every belief system or many belief systems and many ideologies, I think, have a lot to teach us, anybody, we have to also know when to step outside them, or as Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. We always have to challenge, once again, like I was saying before, our perspectives. And so this also applies to less extreme ideologies. For example, nowadays, liberal and conservative, like I'm sure many, like I'm imagining, such as myself, find the word liberal and conservative kind of ad nauseum. It's repeated so much. It's just paralyzing the country, the United States, because we're just locking into these camps, and they're just you're just trying to basically you're surrendering thought and basically simply going along with your party line. So Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, yada, 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 yada. I'm kind of sick and tired of it, actually. I believe that, let me just say that one of the things I advocate is a non-party political system for the same reason. I agree with George Washington. He said it long ago. He get rid of the political parties. Or actually, in his case, not get rid of them. He didn't want to see them form in the country. And of course, no one listened to him, and we started off with party politics. But I think a system of independent political disagreement and compromise is what we need, and there is movement afoot in this country. Now, let me just take a short break at this particular time. I'll be back in about 2 minutes. All right?
This is Jennifer Ott of the Super Genius Show. Tune in on Thursday nights at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where I'll be chatting with a whole bunch of super geniuses.
Are you a person who enjoys intellectual social interaction and finds digging deeper into the nature of things, from big issues to everyday life, an important part of the pleasure of life? Social Philosophizers is a Boston area social club for those who desire intellectual socializing. It's a club for both singles and non-singles, and for anyone who finds intellectually mingling to be the best form of social mingling. The club offers a variety of interesting venues such as philosophical get-togethers in private venues, book discussions concerning literature and philosophy, topical discussions over brunch or dinner, guest speakers, theater, after-work mixers, even long philosophical ruminations along nature trails or city streets, and more. If you live in the greater Boston area or occasionally spend time in the area, you can choose a cost-effective membership level that's right for you. Basic membership is free. Find the link on Arthur's Philosophical Perspectives show page at ArtistFirst.com or just search socialphilosophizers.com. We hope you'll join Social Philosophizers today. That's socialphilosophizers.com.
This is George Thorogood of the Destroyers, and you're listening to ArtistFirst Radio.
And now back to Philosophic Perspectives with your host, Arthur D. Schwartz.
Hi, so we're back. So I was talking about the difference or the relationship between self and other. It's such a fundamental, basic principle of ethics. Again, I talk about ethics as the study of morality, just like science is the study of physical phenomena. So I look at morality as the subject, ethics as the discipline. In practice, they're often interchangeable, but in my terminology, I try to make a distinction generally. And so morality is about the relationship between self and other, and from that ultimately comes love, because love is the transcendence of that dichotomy that is able to reconcile the differences between self and other, the interests of self and the interests of other, the self-regarding and other-regarding interests. Now, on that score, and seeking this harmonization, I think about this horrific dehumanization that what we see now in the modern age, this dehumanizing spectacle of ISIS or ISIL. I have to. Some of you might have seen a Saturday Night Live skit with an actor portraying President Obama. It was shortly after the president decided that he was going to call that organization ISIL as opposed to ISIS. And it was very, very funny, and he just, kind of said, well, there's ISIL everywhere. Who can argue with that? Now, however, I go along with the French and other nations, including the Arab nations, who have been victimized by Daesh. That's what they call them. The Daesh is really nothing else but a brutal gang of psychopaths. It's an Arabic term, I understand, that reflects it's the acronym, but it does tend to have a pejorative quality, I understand, because the ISIS, I don't like to call them people, the animals, they don't like that for some reason. Now, here we have this spectacle of weak, very troubled young people by social media becoming captivated by this idea that they too can participate in beheadings and burnings of life, burning people alive. We see this going on. It's absolutely mind-boggling that it's occurring. And what's going on here? And they're very adept. The Daesh is very adept at using social media and getting these young people going over there and to do these absolutely subhuman, engage in these subhuman behaviors. They just reduce themselves to the lowest kind of scum. What virus has entered the psyche so that a criminal gang that publishes how to how to enslave and justify the enslavement of women, or use children as soldiers, and all these despicable acts that just boggle the mind, and all in the name of God. Give me a break. We're witnessing the utter destruction of the human spirit. But the talent of these psychopathic criminals, the talent they have in social marketing and attracting pathetic teens by the hundreds or thousands, can it not be said, could not Hollywood challenge this adeptness in social media? Where is Hollywood? Where is Hollywood? Where is Hollywood to come up with an ingenious, creative, powerful media and social networks and otherwise that can more effectively convey human decency, even under difficult circumstances, that we don't have to degrade ourselves to the snake? This whole issue is just, let's get back to the moral imperative of balancing self and other. Does anyone doubt that the skill, creativity, the genius, and the money that Hollywood possesses could not come up with a social marketing and media campaign that would penetrate the psyches of Daesh wannabes and bring their self-destructive and suicidal flight to their enslavers to a crushing halt? Where is Hollywood? What's the problem? Wouldn't you think that they could just focus some of their millions of dollars and donate it straight away to a cause célèbre that would earn them the praise and worldwide gratitude that badly needs them using their creativity right now? The most important thing right now would be that, except barring, let's say, food for starving children around the world. The two are probably on the same level. Where is Hollywood? We need them. We need you, Hollywood. We need you desperately. We need you desperately to take this understaffed, not ready for primetime players called the Center for Strategic Counterterrorism Communications. We need you to step up. And we talk about American ingenuity and American creativity and American might. Well, one of the strongest aspects or elements, I should say, of American might is actually Hollywood. And so I think it's time for them to step up and donate their money and donate their creativity and to fight back the very thing that all our bombings are failing to do. So I hope Hollywood steps up. Now, my book, Ethical Empowerment, Virtue Beyond the Paradigms, contains many examples of what I see are imbalances in the dynamic relationship between self and other. It is a moral dialectic that shifts and oscillates according to the situation. I go into many subjects. I mentioned the political party or the abolition of political parties that I recommend and to promote. And I believe that is something that's absolutely possible and is going to continue to grow. I have for a long time. Okay, so what I'm going to do now at this particular point, because this is really a soliloquy, I'm just talking about some of my ideas and some of the things that I'm involved with, and in the weeks ahead, this show is going to be twice, first and third Wednesday of each month, and I'll be inviting guests from the range of arts and academia and authors. To really bring in unique perspectives so that we can enrich ourselves. So, if I may, I'm just going to continue to ramble here. Right now, one of my favorite topics is the conspiracy theory. Why are they so cool? A lot of people think so. I certainly do. I enjoy listening to the conspiracy theories, even when I think it's a load of crap. What's up with the conspiracy theory? Why are they so fascinating? The love of intrigue? Well, certainly, that's part of it. It's human nature to be, to have this, to be fascinated by intrigue. But I also think that the reality of conflicting interests in the world automatically lends itself to the plausibility of many conspiracy theories. There are competing interests. And so some parties are going to think that when they're that the playing field is not flat. There's vested interests that are preventing one side or the other to get what they need or get what they want or get what they believe can be the case. Now, after all, a key principle of police investigation and criminal conviction is the finding of motive. Most crimes have a motive. A motive is itself a reason for reasonable investigation. Isn't that the way we look at the crimes? If there is a motive, then it warrants investigation. If someone is murdered, unfortunately, and the police are investigating, and someone might have a motive for committing the crime, they're going to be investigated. So, conspiracy theories are really no different than that to a certain extent. I recently came across a story that Ringo Starr said that Paul McCartney had indeed died in 1966. I was flabbergasted. I mean, I know the story, of course. I even remember it as a little kid. And, and Ringo Starr allegedly in this magazine, Hollywood. I'm not sure if the magazine is actually legitimate. But supposedly he was interviewed, and he basically said, Paul McCartney is the man we know as Paul McCartney was kind of not really an imposter because he is who he is. But in 1966, back in the British invasion days, he died in a car crash, and then the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club band came out, and you might remember the jingle, then the one and only Billy Shears. Yeah. And the claim is that Paul McCartney is actually this Billy Shears, and they show these pictures, and they get these incredible similarity. And, actually, if Ringo Starr is saying this in an interview, and if it's verified, which when I first looked at it, it certainly seemed to be. Is Ringo Starr lying? I mean, come on. But then I went back on today, and I looked at it again. I did some more searching, and Paul McCartney finally has come out with a denial, and he basically said that, Ringo Starr is senile and losing his mind. That's what I read online today. I think he just said that. Well, you know what? I trust in Paul McCartney. So, I'm going to go with that. I think he's the real McCartney, the same Paul McCartney that was with the Beatles in 1965 and 1966 when he first came over here. I trust Paul McCartney, unless proven otherwise. But trust is the key in all relationships, isn't it? Isn't it always coming down to trust? If we trusted individuals involved in conspiratorial activities, we wouldn't question them. Doesn't always come down to trust. Doesn't always come down to trust in our personal relationships. How can a marriage succeed if the two don't trust each other? if we don't trust our government, doesn't that lay the ground for suspicion about conspiracy theories, that what's been told or what's been supposed to be or claimed to be the truth is not the truth? It all comes down to trust. And so we can end conspiracy theories pretty quickly if the reasons for doubt become replaced with reasons for trust. I trust Paul McCartney. That's why I'm thinking that he is actually Paul McCartney today and has always been, until proven otherwise. I mean, there are questions there. I never thought about it, but I've become aware that there are actually questions. But I believe in Sir Paul. That's the way I feel about that until otherwise. Now, trust is the key. Now, if we mistrust some of the key actors that are involved in famous conspiracy theories such as the JFK assassination and 9/11, and yes, there are some real reasons for doubt. And when we look at the key figures involved, and if we don't trust them, and if the reasons for the mistrust become compounded by false statements, or by obstructionism, or by other tactics, or by inconsistencies, or by lack of openness, then that only breeds mistrust. And that only fosters conspiracy theories. Now, I am fascinated by conspiracy theories. It doesn't mean that I necessarily believe them. I very, very, very much want to believe that 9/11 was completely conspiracy-free. But there are questions. There are lots of questions. And anyone who looks at it closely will see that. Such as building, building 8, building 6. I forget one of the big building that came down, other than the Twin Towers, is a huge building, not as tall as the Twin Towers. Never was hit by the airplane. Still, it came down like a set of dominoes, a house of cards. And in the history of architecture, there's never been a building come down collapse like it did, by fire. And yet we had 3 coming down almost at the same time, within days. Well, the 2 towers, one after the other building a day or 2 later, I believe. Unheard of. And there's obstructionism. Well, personally, I don't think if it's a conspiracy. I mean, I think it's a partial conspiracy. It could be a few different things involved. Half and half. Anyway, as is often the case, it's not necessarily a pure situation, because there are elements that could be unaware of the other, and they're being manipulated. In any case, it's a horrible thing to think about. But you know what? Trust is so important. But so is the truth. And that's the thing. And if we care about the truth, we need to care enough to demand trust and to demand openness, so that we are satisfied in knowing that we've done our very, very best to know the truth. And I think this is one of the most fundamental aspects of a philosophical orientation. What constitutes the truth? Now, there's a psychology of the truth. That trust issue is really in the realm of psychology because, truth is something that's conveyed by experts, conveyed by human beings, and if we don't trust those human beings for psychological reasons, let's say, well then we're not going to necessarily believe them. But getting to the truth, philosophy is not science. It doesn't ascertain, the truth about the facts, but it does have the ability, and that's epistemology, to question how we go about finding the facts, or how we go about ascertaining if something is true. So, conspiracies are something I am fascinated with, and I hope to have guests on this show to go more deeply into that. Guests who are much more well-versed than I in the subject. Okay, I think it's time for another break, and I'll be back in about another 2 minutes.
When tornadoes raked the South, it was ham radio that was on the air, saving lives. As communities lay in ruins, it was the hams who let their families know their loved ones were safe. When the power and cell phones went out, the hams were there, helping rescuers get the message through. Wherever catastrophes strike, amateur radio is ready. Amateur radio works when other communications don't. Contact the ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, on the web at emergencyradio.org. That's emergencyradio.org.
Are you a person who enjoys intellectual social interaction and finds digging deeper into the nature of things, from big issues to everyday life, an important part of the pleasure of life? Social Philosophizers is a Boston area social club for those who desire intellectual socializing. It's a club for both singles and non-singles, and for anyone who finds intellectually mingling to be the best form of social mingling. The club offers a variety of interesting venues such as philosophical get-togethers in private venues, book discussions concerning literature and philosophy, topical discussions over brunch or dinner, guest speakers, theater, after-work mixers, even long philosophical ruminations along nature trails or city streets, and more. If you live in the greater Boston area or occasionally spend time in the area, you can choose a cost-effective membership level that's right for you. Basic membership is free. Find the link on Arthur's Philosophical Perspectives show page at ArtistFirst.com or just search SocialPhilosophizers.com. We hope you'll join Social Philosophizers today. That's SocialPhilosophizers.com.
Hi, this is K-Nut from Norwegian band Tripod. Check us out at facebook.com/tripodofficial. You are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
And now back to Philosophic Perspectives with your host, Arthur D. Schwartz.
Hi there, back again. I do want to just point out that during the program, you can feel free to email me at artistfirstradio@arthurdschwartz.com. The email, once again, would be, I've got it right here, artistfirstradio@arthurdschwartz.com. So I'm going to finish the program here. We're just going through a number of different topics here, and to round it off, and then we'll close the show and come back next time. Now, what is the difference between trust and faith? I talked about trust, and yet trust is important for someone to have a basis or a foundation for for truth. Trust is important for have relationships at work. Trust is important for having a government that works. But let's take a look at faith. What does faith mean? Well, there's religious faith, certainly. But there's also faith in yourself. Is faith in yourself just trusting yourself? Or is it more than that? Is trusting another person the same thing as having faith in another person? And I think there is a distinction. You might trust somebody, but in an emergency situation, is trust enough? If you have faith in somebody, faith that this person will be able to go deep inside of himself to find that spirit, that answer to a troubling challenge, that ability to pull a rabbit out of the hat, that is what I would call faith. Faith is that ineffable something. That's something that gives you the confidence that we can get through, that we can solve the problem, that we can win the game, that we can be successful, that we can save the day. Faith in God is that too in a higher being. But faith in ourselves is also like that in a way. In fact, the thing that makes faith such an incredible thing is that it does, it does help us become like the gods, because we reach down inside and come up with answers and solutions, and that we didn't think were possible, because we transcend the black and white. We transcend the redundancies. We transcend simply the training. You're trained in a certain way. And yet sometimes your training can't account or doesn't tell you how or what to do, what you need to do to solve the problem. And faith in yourself is what gives you that magic, you might say. Faith in yourself. And so, for me, ethical empowerment involves a kind of faith. It's a kind of faith that always leaves something in doubt. Because the faith is based upon that which you can't know, that which is unexpected, that which no rules are written, no training course is given. And yet you have the basic foundation that becomes the springboard for that energy, for that harmonic power that allows you to bring, almost like in an art, the solution that is sort of giving birth to a new idea, giving birth to a new solution, giving birth to a new invention. And so that's what I think ultimately it's about. That's why rules don't work. That's why ideologies don't work. They're very, very limited. But when we go down to the very deepest part of what makes for our humanity and the highest form of our humanity is that we're able to break through. And so if you're a scientist, for example, it might mean breaking through the paradigm. Now I'm getting to one of my other favorite subjects, where paradigms are broken very, very, very slowly. Maybe we can speed that up a little bit. And so what I call plural perspectivism applies here as well on a scientific level. that we should challenge our paradigms, that we can do things that seem impossible. Science has done it all through the last 200 years, done what was previously impossible. That's another definition of humanity, doing what's impossible in a good way. When I look at Daesh, I see them doing what I thought were impossible for human beings to do. There is a negative side. Human beings have great depth in a negative sense and great potential in the most beautiful, positive sense. I guess that is really the secret behind human nature, because our potential covers everything. We can go 180 degrees either way. We can completely blow ourselves up, and I think some people. I did hear Michio Kaku, the theoretical physicist, say one time that the odds are not in our favor. We're not going to make it. It's not in our favor. We'll make it beyond the next 100 years. Just statistically, according to his timeline, in terms of the ability of our, I would say, probably our moral development to keep pace with our scientific development, technological development. But I'm an optimist. But the thing about humanity is we have so much upside and so much downside. That's the one thing about Daesh, that they show how low we can truly go. A bottomless pit. And that's possible. And so I think it's our responsibility, every human being's responsibility who cares, who believes in love, who believes in the highest aspirations, who believes that ethical and social harmony can prevail, that individuals can rise to greatness, and so would does the collectivity of humanity, the communities, the nations, the world, a collection of individuals, a decentralized collection that has a libertarian and socialistic quality simultaneously, a collectivity that respects self and other, an empowerment that actualizes the greatness of the individual and the greatness of the collectivity. Isn't that what human life is about? Isn't that what we lose sight of? Isn't that when we see the horrific decadence, degrading, subhuman descendants that some group, some criminal organized gang like Daesh represent? And there have been others, unfortunately, as we know. They show how it is possible to fall through the hole to the bottom of the earth, because they have lost all sight of what makes a human being truly a human being, which is love. Because those people don't have one drop of love in their soul. There's no doubt of that. But for the rest of us, we can strive, and that's what I think. That's what I think life is about: learning and striving. Now, one of my favorite philosophers is Friedrich Nietzsche, and his Overman, or Übermensch, was a character. It wasn't a single character. It was a class of individuals who would be able to overcome themselves. They would become able to overcome rigid rules and overcome, their selves so that they can achieve greatness. Now, his views are very different than mine in many respects. Of course, he was writing in the 19th century, and he was generally, thought more in terms of the self-regarding than the other-regarding, but not quite as blatantly as Ayn Rand, for example. But I really do think Nietzsche's heart was in the right place. And in my book, I talk about the new overman, a new class of people, a new class of inventors. And in my book, I propose a new patent system that would liberate inventions, transform the patent system that we have today. There's a fine balance between an open mind and a reckless mind. And ethical empowerment is created by a harmonic resonance that is a continuous struggle to balance the interests of both self and others. Ethics involves so much more than what is typically, considered to be the realm of ethics. Because there's philosophy of science, philosophy of medicine, there's political philosophy, there's philosophy of beauty, aesthetics, there's philosophy of sports, there's philosophy of everything and anything. Because whatever it is you do in life, you need to have a philosopher to look at what you're doing so that you can clear your head and to let yourself know what you're doing and if you're doing it well. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we don't do that. Well, I'm just going to before we called it a night. I just want to go over a few other topics that I cover, not on the theoretical part, but the book is divided in two sections, and the second section is mostly practical issues. I talk a lot about science, or what scientists deride as pseudoscience. I talk about a new patent system, which I just mentioned. I talk about the political party, which I've mentioned. I talk about a new replacement to the current evaluation of currencies. I'm opposed to the current system of market valuation of currencies. I'm opposed to the income tax. I have a theory of real estate, which very few would like. I believe in a world society, but not a world order, rather a decentralized society, like I said, which is as much libertarian as it is socialistic. I go into conspiracies, and I talk about many other smaller topics, even including things like compounded interest rates, and the Middle East crisis, and the pro-life and abortion issue, vegetarianism, and Pascal's wager, and many, many other things. So I hope you have the opportunity to go onto Amazon or one of the other sites and check out my book and consider ordering it. So I think that's about it for today. I want to thank you for joining me on my debut program. I want to let you know that for links to the radio show, for my book, my professional hypnotherapy and philosophical counseling practice, please visit arthurdschwartz.com. And so, this is Arthur D. Schwartz reminding you to live well and think deeply. Until next time, good night, everybody.